takes?
No, I'm not going to apologize to Ryan Day. Everything we said about Ryan Day up into the playoffs was true.
Not bad. Come on, Kenner. You can do better than that.
To be fair, of all the elite quarterbacks in the NFL, Joe Burrow is the least accomplished.
Getting better.
1,000,000%. I 1,000,000% believe that the Dayton Flyers are afraid of the Wright State Raiders. That's why they come up with every excuse in the book not to play them.
There it is. The hottest take of them all. It's the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers, live on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, everybody, happy Thursday. Welcome in the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers, right here on 1410 ESPN Radio. So I did say happy Thursday. I feel it. I've had this conversation with multiple coworkers today. Is it just me, or does today feel like a Friday? It has major Friday vibes. I'm distracted like it's a Friday. I'm not as locked in like it's a Friday, because, Friday you're looking ahead to the weekend. Maybe it's because we have a holiday weekend coming up. I don't know what it is, but I am excited to be with you guys here, and I'm excited that there's a ton to talk about. I wish I was more excited to talk about the Cincinnati Reds, which we will get into coming up here in just a moment. So where do we start? I have some college football stuff we're going to jump into. Ohio State looking to take the Texas game and move the kickoff time back, according to 11 Warriors and a couple other Buckeye outlets out there. We'll get into that coming up. People are mad at Texas. I'm here to tell you that I have no problem with what Texas's stance is on this. So we'll get to that coming up here shortly. But I figure it's safe to break it out. I figure it's safe to talk Cincinnati Reds. I figure it's safe to talk about Terry Francona and what's going on in all Cincinnati at this point. Terry Francona, to me, still is the best manager in baseball. I don't care what anybody says. I'm still so confused as to why so many Reds fans continue to think that you and we know more than a Hall of Fame manager in Terry Francona. If you guys recall, the last time the Reds had a Hall of Fame manager that was chased out of town, if you guys recall, things got very, very ugly for the next 13 years afterwards, right? Do you guys recall that? Does that ring a bell? The last time that you, a Reds fan, decided that you knew more than a Hall of Fame manager, remember what that got us? It got Riggleman, got Brian Price. It gave us David Bell. David Bell was not the worst, by the way, but come on. I think I would have taken Dusty Baker over any of those guys. Dusty Baker has won at every single stop, has taken multiple teams to a World Series, has won a World Series, but yet Reds fans were adamant that they knew more than he did. And yet here we are, a Hall of Fame manager, a guy that has taken multiple teams to a World Series, the guy that has won multiple World Series, that has won in Boston, which is not easy to do. He has won in Cleveland, not easy to do. Taking Cleveland to a World Series, overcoming lack of spending, overcoming a lot of front office deficiencies, but yet somehow, some way, the Reds get a guy like that. And yet here we are having the same conversations. Reds fans who have not seen a winner in over a decade have decided that we know more than Terry Francona. I have a problem with that. I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with this idea that Terry Francona is the problem in Cincinnati right now. We discussed this on Off the Bench earlier today. And by the way, I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. We welcome you in. The crazy part about this is, and we discussed this on Off the Bench earlier, so many people are throwing a lot of shade at the direction of Terry Francona, calling him out because of the lack of fundamental improvement when it comes to this Cincinnati Reds team. And I truly want to know, fundamental improvement, what do you necessarily mean by that? And I'm going to open up the phone lines, 937-518-1410, 937-518-1410. What fundamental improvement are you exactly talking about? Because if it's about the fielding errors, don't you think that professional baseball players should know how to field a ball? Don't you think that professional baseball players should be able to call out a ball, communicate on the field, know when and when is not the right time to run? Professional baseball players That's what these guys are supposed to be. Terry Francona is, let me look this up because I was disrespectful earlier and just said Terry Francona is old. I want to make sure that I am being respectful here. So 66 years old. Terry Francona at 66 years old, you guys expect him to physically go out in the field and show Ellie De La Cruz and show Spencer Steer and show insert Reds player here how to field a ground ball? Don't you think that the journey that it took to get to Major League Baseball, somewhere along the way, that these players at some point were taught how to field a ground ball? This idea that you get to the majors and then are taught how to field a ground ball seems pretty stupid. Terry Francona should be improving their fundamentals. Well, I don't know what you mean by that. These are professional baseball players. I think that the Reds need to do a better job of getting guys who know how to field a ground ball, that understand base running, that understands what it takes to be a good defensive baseball player. I mean, what are we doing? The honeymoon stage with Terry Francona seems to be officially over, which is pretty insane when you truly think about it, how fortunate the Reds are to get a guy like Terry Francona. Am I saying that he is free of all blame for the struggles that the Reds have had to this point? They're sitting at 25-26. They got my hopes up over the weekend when, of course, you're coming off that drop in 2 or 3 against the White Sox, but they took game 3. Then they go to win all 3 games against the Guardians, sweeping them at home in rivalry weekend. And then, of course, you put 7 runs up on the board against the Pirates in game 1. You win that one 7-1. And it felt like this team with 5 straight wins, a sweep under their belt over the Guardians, one of the top teams in the AL, with the Cubs on the horizon and the return of Hunter Green. It felt like this team was trending in the right direction. And now everyone's angry because they pulled we thought that the Reds had come back to us and had put out a chair for us and said, come on, Reds fans, let's sit down and have a good time. And then right as you go to sit, they yank the chair out from underneath you. They yank the chair out from underneath you. And now you're angry. Now you're angry because they made you look like a fool. They made me look like a fool. And I get why you're angry. And you don't really know where to direct your anger towards. Who should you direct your anger towards? It seems like a lot of you are directing your anger towards Terry Francona and putting the blame on him. And I'm here to tell you that that sounds absolutely ridiculous. Terry Francona will forget more about baseball than you will ever know. He will forget more about baseball than I will ever know. Terry Francona is not the problem with this team. In fact, he's the only reason that I think a lot of us truly feel like this team even has a chance, because you have someone with the presence that he does walking around in that clubhouse. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. Reds drop to 25-26 on the season following the Pirates series loss after taking game 1. Keep in mind, too, the Reds have, you know how many runs they gave up in that 3-game Pirates series? 5. In 3 games against the Pirates, they gave up a total of 5 runs, and they lost the series. How? It doesn't make any sense how the Reds continuously do this. We're going to go back and find out and count this, but me, Jacob, and Elliot today on Off the Bench, we believe, and we have to go look this up, and I guarantee you it's true, I really feel like the Reds have to lead Major League Baseball in series lost while outscoring opponent in said series. That has happened way too often. Did you know that the Pirates, by the way, the Pirates are the only team in baseball to average less than 3 runs a game? The Pirates, I believe, I saw some crazy number. They've gone 26 games in a row without scoring 4 or more runs. They average 2.96 runs per game. They're the worst run. That's the worst run average in baseball. No other team averages less than 3 runs a game except the Pittsburgh Pirates. And the Pirates didn't play well against the Reds. They put up 5 runs in 3 games. There's nothing for the Pirates to be bragging about. You came away with the series. Great. Because you stumbled across an offense that somehow, some way is more dysfunctional than you. And the difference is that the Pirates are bad offensively, and the statistics back that up. The statistics don't back up the fact that the Reds are bad. In fact, it's the opposite. The statistics continue to say that the Reds are a very good offensive team. I think they've scored the 12th most runs in baseball. They think they're 11th in runs per game. They average like 4.8 something per game. Where are those 4.8 runs per game on a nightly basis? Are you seeing them? Because I'm not. Is it Terry Francona's responsibility to go up there and put the ball in play for Elly De La Cruz, who is within the next couple of years going to be paid an obscene amount of money to do so? Guys, we got to stop with this Terry Francona stuff. Now, you're going to say, well, Kenner, you're a hypocrite. Didn't you spend the majority of the David Bell run blaming David Bell? I absolutely did. David Bell is not Terry Francona. David Bell is not Terry Francona. We had the Hall of Famer Marty Brennaman on the show earlier this week. In fact, we had a chance to talk to him about his thoughts on the Terry Francona era thus far, only 51 games into the Terry Francona era. Here's what the Hall of Famer Marty Brennaman had to say about his thoughts on what happened with the Cincinnati Reds when they were able to go out and get a Terry Francona to name as the manager. Check it out.
In all the years that the Castellini family has owned this ball club, that's the single biggest move that they have ever made. And that was to name him manager of the Reds. Now, having said that, what worries me a little bit, and I'm not seeing it as much as I thought I would be, he was pumped up because of his reputation so much that I think there are fans who erroneously expect him to be a miracle worker. And as we all know, great managers' careers start with having great players. And players who can win. And so I think he will make a major difference in the years that he's here. I know he's thoroughly enjoying his job and he loves this bunch of players that he has around him. And I think it was just the right move, one that I don't think anybody expected to happen, but it did. And thank God he's managing the Cincinnati Reds.
Terry Francona, again, named the Cincinnati Reds manager back in October, 51 games into his Reds managerial career, 25-26 the record, and Reds fans are furious with Terry Francona nonetheless. Look, to be fair on this, because I'm acting as if he's immune to any kind of criticism whatsoever, I do think he did a poor job managing this Pirates series. I will give you guys that. But there's a difference, and I'm pretty fair on this because I've always believed that being critical of a manager, of a coach, or a player does not mean that I am saying that manager needs to be fired or that coach needs to be fired or that the player needs to be cut, released, or traded. I hate that that's the fan mentality a lot of times, that, man, when you criticize somebody, well, who else? I mean, there has to be a better manager out there than this. Why can't we just say, hey, the manager didn't manage well this series? The same way when we talk about Elly De La Cruz. You remember in the first 2 weeks of April when Elly De La Cruz went 4 for 46? Or 6 for 44, my apologies, whatever. Elly De La Cruz in the first 10 days of April went 4 for 46 or whatever it was from the field. We criticized Elly. I did. I didn't say cut Elly. I didn't say get rid of Elly. I didn't say trade Elly. I just said, hey, Elly, you need to be better. And that's where I'm at with Terry Francona after that Pirates series. Game 2, choosing to leave Espinal in over, of course, having 2 really good hitters that he could have pinch hit in that particular situation. The fact that we didn't see Will Benson in games 2 and 3 after being named the National League Player of the Week was the hottest bat in this Reds lineup, and Terry Francona didn't even allow him to play but back-to-back days. Yeah, in days where the Reds struggle to put runs up, yes, I have a problem with that. I'm not a fan of that move by Terry Francona. But if you go look at a lot of the social media jargon that's going on right now, it's beyond just being frustrated with the fact that he didn't play Will Benson. A lot of fans, they're coming out with pitchforks for Terry Francona. And you heard Marty Brennaman say it, that he's not a miracle worker. There's no such thing as a miracle worker in baseball. And that's what Marty's concern was. And I've expressed that concern in the past. I feel like the reason the honeymoon period for Terry Francona ended so early is because I think a lot of Reds fans, including me, were desperate to see a winner out on that field. And we thought that Terry Francona meant that we were guaranteed to see a winner out on that field. And when we don't see a winner out on that field, I think we panic. I think we panicked with the fact that if Terry Francona can't win with this group, nobody can. If the Cincinnati Reds can't win with Terry Francona as the manager, this organization will never win again. That's what I feel like is leading to the panic that is being set on this fan base, which is leading to the loud outcry of criticism for Terry Francona. It's not as if we don't like Terry Francona. I feel like the panic that's setting in amongst the fan base is you are relying so much on Terry Francona that when this team does not look the part, it's you panicking, saying, well, if he can't get it done, who the hell can? And I agree with that mindset. I shouldn't say I agree with it. I I understand that mindset. I think it's a fair mindset to have. Probably a little short-sighted because I view it that way too. But at the same time, I understand why people are freaking out a bit. But let's just pump the brakes when it comes to acting as if you know more than Terry Francona when it comes to managing in Major League Baseball. That's all. Final point, and it's the point I made to open up the show, and it's a point I've made in the past. The last time the Reds had a Hall of Fame manager that has taken multiple teams to a World Series, that has won a World Series, that has won everywhere he has gone. The last time the Reds had that, this same fan base ran him out of town because this same fan base, which hasn't seen a World Series in 3 decades and some change, 3.5 decades to be exact, that fan base thought that they knew more than a Hall of Fame manager and Dusty Baker. And how did that work out? And here we are a decade later, and nothing's changed. We have a Hall of Fame manager who has won everywhere he has gone, who has taken multiple teams to a World Series, who has won multiple World Series, and somehow, some way, there are people sitting on their couch or in their mom's basement who truly believe that they know more about how to manage the Cincinnati Reds than Terry Francona. And I'm here to tell you, you're wrong. That's absolutely ridiculous. You want to be mad at Terry Francona? Fine. But saying that he should have stayed retired, I mean, the comments that are coming in are just insane. We put out a poll earlier today. On Chatterbox that said, how would you grade the job that Terry Francona has done 50-plus games into the season? We've had close to 500 votes on this poll right now, and over half of the votes that have come in on this poll have said that they would grade Terry Francona with the C. They would give him a C grade. 4.5% of the poll said they'd give him an A, which I couldn't give Terry Francona an A. Let's just be clear. I don't think he's done A+ work. You know, there's been a lot of games where I've questioned the decisions that he has made. And it's not just questioning the decisions that he has made. I've questioned the decisions that he has made in losses. And I think there's a difference there because there's some wins where bad decision-making gets just overlooked because you win. It's being magnified because they're losing games, you know, but 52.4% of the vote has come in off the near 500 votes that were placed on this poll, and it's still active. They would give him a C. And I think a C is fair. If we're going to give out a grade to Terry Francona when it comes to the job that he has done to this point, 51 games into the season, I think a C is fair. I've seen a lot of things that I really like, and I've seen a lot of things that need to be buttoned up and fixed, but he's also still trying to figure out this team. I was not as mad about the Espinal thing as what everybody else was. Espinal, when people got angry when he said Espinal is one of our best hitters. He's not wrong. Why would you let Espinal hit in that position? Well, because Espinal is one of the Reds' better hitters. Should he still have probably gone to Will Benson? Yes. But he's not wrong. And if a Hall of Fame manager that's won multiple World Series feels like he trusts his guy, Santiago Espinal, in that particular situation, I'm going to roll with his gut. All right. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. How do you guys feel about Terry Francona? Is the Terry Francona honeymoon period over? Do you find yourself doubting Terry Francona? Do you find yourself questioning whether he should have come out of retirement? Are you questioning the Reds for hiring him? Are we giving up on the Hall of Fame manager, Terry Francona? What is going on? So much criticism, so much anger. Am I giving too much attention to the negativity, or is that a fair assessment of the job he has done 51 games into the season? 937-518-1410. How do we feel about Terry Francona? We'll pick up at this conversation when we come back. We also got college football stuff to dive into. The Ohio State-Texas game, week 1, big noon kickoff. Fox, of course, it was announced that they will be carrying that game. Ohio State, according to 11 Warriors and others, say they're trying to get that kickoff time moved back. Texas, not a big fan of that idea. We'll discuss that later in the show as well. More of the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers when we come back. All right, and we welcome you back here, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM, the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits. Titan Graphics is the Miami Valley's choice for custom screen printing, embroidery, laser engraving, and promotional products. Place your order today at Titan Graphics. Titan Graphics, the official screen printing, embroidery, laser engraving, and promotional product giveaway sponsor of the Justin Kinner Show, which you can catch us every single day from 3 until 6 right here on 1410 ESPN Radio. Keep in mind, I'll be out on vacation all next week. But here in the afternoon, the guys from Chatterbox will be holding it down. So keep that in mind. We have that coming up for you next week. I'll be out going to visit my brother over in Norfolk. He's in the Navy. Haven't seen him in a while, so looking forward to getting a little off time. So I'll be out next week, but I wanted to make sure we got to touch base here today. A lot to talk about. Talking about the Cincinnati Reds, 25-26 now on the season after, kind of all the momentum, all the work that they put into gaining momentum ahead of this Cubs series. All of that work just thrown out the window. You know, it was unfortunate that you dropped 2 or 3 against the White Sox, but you were able to avoid the sweep by winning Game 3. You build on that by taking all 3 in the sweep over the Cleveland Guardians at Great American Ballpark over the weekend. Then you punch Pittsburgh in the mouth as you should in Game 1. That made the winners of 5 straight. They had just announced that Hunter Green was going to make his return off the IL Friday night, tomorrow night against the Chicago Cubs in Game 1. And it should have mattered more. This series with the Cubs should feel bigger than what it's going to be now. This Cubs series now doesn't feel as important, and maybe it should feel more important because of what they've done. But it really does tick me off. It has definitely soured my anticipation and excitement for this Cubs series coming up because I thought, man, you sweep the Guardians, you take 2 or 3 from the Pirates, you finally started making up some ground in both the NL Central and the wild card. Cubs coming up. Their division, they're now 10 games over 500, by the way. The Cubs do what they're supposed to. They beat the teams they're supposed to. Very unfortunate. But I have seen that a lot of Reds fans have turned on Terry Francona. So we talked about it in the opening segment. Is the Terry Francona honeymoon period officially over? And you guys know my stance on this. I know, and it seems like I'm very hypocritical because all I did was bury David Bell for years. And the reason I buried David Bell for years, and I don't give him the benefit of the doubt, the same benefit of the doubt that I'm giving Terry Francona, is because there's a Hall of Fame multi-World Series winning track record for one, and a lot of losing for the other. The Cincinnati Reds, and you heard the clip, Marty Brenneman joined us earlier in the week and talked about the single biggest move that the Castellinis have made in the Castellini era was hiring Terry Francona. Take a listen.
In all the years that the Castellini family has owned this ball club, that's the single biggest move that they have ever made. And that was to name him manager of the Reds. Now, having said that, what worries me a little bit, and I'm not seeing it as much as I thought I would be, he was pumped up because of his reputation so much that I think there are fans who erroneously expect him to be a miracle worker. And as we all know, great managers' careers start with having great players, and players who can win. And so I think he will make a major difference in the years that he's here. I know he's thoroughly enjoying his job, and he loves this bunch of players that he has around him. And I think it was just the right move, one that I don't think anybody expected to happen, but it did. And thank God he's managing the Cincinnati Reds.
And that's kind of how I feel. Thank God he's managing the Cincinnati Reds. Are things going great? Absolutely not. Marty would go on in the interview with him that we had earlier in the week and say, the problem is because of his track record, everyone expected immediate results, that Terry comes into the clubhouse and all of a sudden all the deficiencies are erased and this team is one of the best in baseball. Even with the higher expectations, and by the way, I'm always more confident, more optimistic when it comes to this team than I probably should be. At my peak optimistic point, never said that this was a World Series contending team. I said they were good enough to contend for this division because as good as the Cubs have played, I don't think that they're untouchable. They have a lot of deficiencies too. They are one of the better lineups in baseball, but that rotation is not very good and their bullpen is sketch. So let's just be clear that there's opportunities there to attack the Cubs. The problem is there's been plenty of opportunities for the Reds to have significantly more wins than they do right now, sitting at 25-26. When you go up against bad teams like the White Sox and bad teams like the Pirates and you drop 2 or 3 to both of those, and sure, great, you swept the Guardians. I love that. You can't do that. You can't do that. Is that on Terry Francona? He plays a role in it. That's why I said earlier on the poll question that we put out earlier today, what grade would you give Terry Francona? How would you grade the job that Terry Francona has done 51 games into the season? We've had close to 500 votes. 52, over half of the votes have all said that they would give him a C. And I think that's a fair grade because there's a lot of decision-making problems that I've had an issue with throughout the season. But as far as anything else, come on. Like I said before, the last time the Reds had a Hall of Fame manager leading the way, this fan base, we thought we knew more than that Hall of Fame manager. We chased Dusty Baker out of Cincinnati because we thought we knew more than that guy. You know, the guy that no matter where he goes, wins. He's taken multiple teams to the World Series. He's won a World Series. He's one of the best managers in the history of baseball. Remember when we thought we knew more than that guy? That was pretty funny. I got a huge kick out of that. Listening and reading Reds fans thinking that they knew more than him. That was adorable. Let's not make that same mistake here where we think we know more than Terry Francona and run him out of Cincinnati prematurely. This team was never going to win a World Series. This team had expectations because of the strengths on this roster, and the only reason that they're even within striking distance is because of the strength of this roster. And the whole reason they haven't been able to capitalize on the strength of this roster is because of the deficiencies in this roster, which we knew existed because of the lack of effort that they put into the offseason. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. How we feeling about Terry Francona? 937-518-1410. Let's go to Mo Garcia. Mo, you are live, sir. Thank you for holding.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Kinner. This whole thing about Francona, I was one of the ones that polled, and I gave him a C. I give him a C. He hasn't done anything really bad yet. He hasn't done anything great yet.
Yep.
But let me tell you, when you're asking, this stuff about figuring stuff out, what's there to figure out when you have Will Benson go 5 home runs in 4 games? He's absolutely on fire. He's the National League Player of the Week. And you sit him in the next 2 games? I mean, there's nothing to figure out. I mean, you're a Hall of Fame manager. Why in God's earth would you sit him?
Yeah,
it made absolutely no sense.
And that's what I was saying earlier. There's been some decision-making things of his that I'm not a fan of, and that's the most recent one. One thing we did talk about with that poll, and thank you for participating in that poll, by the way, Mo. 52% of those that participated in that poll said that they would give him a grade of a C. I was like, man, if they take one more game in that Pirates series, I think that the majority of those votes go into the B range. That's how drastic that Pirates series was. I think that if they take one more game from the Pirates, I think that grade goes from a C to a B. And it's at a C right now because of it. I'm not defending that. I think it should be a C. I think he's made a lot of bad decisions throughout this run, but I still don't think there's another manager I'd rather have running this team right now because I don't think any other manager erases deficiencies. But who knows? In a series, Mo, where they only gave up 5 runs in 3 games, I mean, maybe Terry did cost him this series because if we do see him pick up where he left off, National League Player of the Week, 5 home runs in 4 games, if he hits 1 more home run, 2 more home runs, drives in 1 or 2 more runs, they're taking 2, if not all 3 in that series. So, yes, I think that's a very fair criticism when you bring up the Will Benson complaint.
Yeah, and you're killing the kid's confidence. I mean, I don't understand. You're trying to develop your players, and you have a player that has had a little bit of a confidence problem, and he comes up and he is on fire, and you sit him. Imagine had you sat Eric Davis when he was young, or sit Joe Morgan, or any of the greats. It just never happened. I mean, I'm surprised that coaching nowadays. I go back all the way to the Big Red Machine in the 70s.
Yep.
And I don't understand. Sometimes I think even these Hall of Fame coaches now, they overthink the game. So that's all I got on it. But I do like Terry Francona. I think he's a great coach. I think we're lucky to have him. But even great coaches make bonehead mistakes. And sitting Will Benson after being on fire.
Not just one, but 2 games. 2 games. Yeah.
Yeah. And the proof's in the pudding. You went from 7 runs. You went from beating Cleveland to you can't win a series against Pittsburgh. I mean, it's crazy.
That's a roller coaster drop, no doubt. But Mo, I don't think I've heard you call in before. I do appreciate you taking time and doing that, and I hope to hear more of you. Thank you.
Justin, I have called before. I called back when the UD team was. I thought it was the greatest UD Flyer team. They had gone 29-2.
Okay.
And I'd called a couple of times back then. I love your show. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you. Take care.
All righty.
All right, 937-518-1410. So Mo calls in, very critical of Terry Francona with the handling of Will Benson in this Pirates series. That I'll give you. And I want to reemphasize this. I criticize Elly De La Cruz. I criticize Joe Burrow. I criticize a lot of athletes. But at no point when I criticize Joe Burrow do I think that the Bengals should cut, trade, or release him. At no point do I think that the Reds should cut, trade, or release Elly De La Cruz. And at no point should you, as Reds fans, think that the Reds could have done better or could try to do better at manager than Terry Francona. I think that we have to stop this mentality of when you criticize somebody that means they need to be replaced. I'm fine if fans are pissed off at Terry Francona for some of the bad decisions he made as of late. I'm fine with that. I've been critical of it. Where I got frustrated is on social media, seeing how many people said he should have stayed retired. That he's overrated. The Reds could have done better. They should have, in today's baseball, he was the wrong hire. You're basing all that off 51 games. You think that, same fan base that thought the Reds were too good for Dusty Baker, really? Now the same fans are saying the Reds are too good for Terry Francona. Like, you guys, come on now. The fundamentals should be better. I'm a firm believer that these are professional baseball players. How do professional baseball players not know how to field a ground ball? How? Why would Elly De La Cruz, like Terry Francona should have Elly playing better? Elly's fundamentals are horrible. That's on Terry Francona. Let me ask you, what does Terry Francona need to do for Elly De La Cruz, that we call a generational player, by the way? What is it that Terry Francona can do at 66 years old that is going to get through to Elly De La Cruz how to field a ground ball, how to simply throw it to first base without overthrowing it, without making an error trying to field it? What is Terry Francona going to do at 66 years old? Is he going to say, make sure your legs and feet are about shoulder width apart, get down in a good athletic stance, put your glove down here. All right. What are we doing? You think he hasn't been told that before? You think that he's got to this level of baseball without ever being able to properly field a ground ball? At some point, you got to look at Elly De La Cruz and say, figure it out, dude. At some point, you got to look at Elly De La Cruz, who has a multi-hit game, RBI game in game one, and then disappears for the rest of the series. At some point, you got to look at your face of the franchise and say, come on, dude, you're killing us here. You're not a rookie anymore. This isn't even year 2. This is year 3. Fernando Tatis Jr. was elite in year 3. I keep seeing people be a little too patient with Elly. I'm not being patient with Elly. Elly, figure it out. You're too damn good. Well, he's still doing this, and this. Yes, he's doing a lot of things to show you that he's good. He needs to be more consistent. I mean, what are we doing here? Spencer Steer needs to be better. I mean, this lineup up and down, it doesn't make any sense. This Reds team is so confusing, and I really don't think there's much that Terry could do about it outside of forcing the Reds to, I don't know, maybe have traded for Luis Robert from the White Sox, who, by the way, is not just a power hitting outfield. He also has like 17 or 18 steals on the season. You imagine a team that went from the best base running team, or at least the most aggressive base running team in baseball last year, to one of the worst base running teams in baseball this season. Imagine how dangerous the Reds would be when you have Luis Robert. By the way, we always said Luis Robert. I don't know why, but I've heard him called both. It's Luis Robert, whatever. Luis Robert and Elly De La Cruz. You imagine the havoc that they would wreak in the same lineup with both of them on base at the same time. It would be unbelievable. Terry Francona can't go out and force these moves to happen. Or maybe he can. Let's go to Grandpa Mike. Grandpa Mike, how are you, sir?
Joseph, I'm great. How are you?
Not too bad. Living the dream. Happy Thursday.
By the way, have fun on your vacation next week.
I plan on it. The days are getting slower as we're getting closer,
Well, they always do, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
So is Friday your last day?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So that's tomorrow. That's going to drag.
Oh yeah, today
I'm
feels
sorry.
like a Friday.
I don't mean to be Debbie Downer here, but that's going to drag.
You're good. You're good. No, but what you got for us?
No. Anyway, I've got so many different topics on this whole conversation you've been having. A lot I agree with. I don't agree with you know me. I'm a diehard Yankee fan. I'm a big Reds fan since I know a lot of Dragons and stuff. I'd like to invite you and Kev for a drink one day. We could talk for hours. I could talk to you hours right now, but everything here. I give Francona a B-.
Okay.
Which might be the highest grade he's got.
And I'm not against a B-.
I'm going to tell you why.
I could see why people give him a C, but I have no problem giving him a B when you talk about the fact that this group, with all their deficiencies, is only a game under 500. It's not that crazy to not be impressed with that either, technically.
The 75 team, up until like a week ago, had an actual, basically the same record as this team. I'm not comparing this team to the 75 Reds, obviously. I was back in Baltimore then, and I was still a diehard Yankee fan in Baltimore. But anyway, what he's done with the pitching staff is 10 times better than what Bell did.
That's a good point. Yeah.
10 times better. Okay, they gave up 5 runs against the Pirates. And, you know, and the Pirates, obviously, you said average. I think you said like 2.9 runs a game or whatever. The Reds have lost, they've lost 14 games this year where they've gave up 2 runs or less.
That's hard to do.
That is insane. That is insane. They scored 2 runs against the Pirates? No, they scored 7 runs in the first game against the Pirates?
Yep. 7-1.
And then they scored nothing in 1.
And they've done that multiple times. If you think back to that.
And they outscored, like you said, they outscored them.
Yeah, that Rangers series.
Baseball and you said they were like the top and outscoring teams in series, but have lost.
I mean, if you remember that, I think it was that second series of the season with the Rangers. Remember, they put up 14 runs on the board, and then they get shut out in games 2 and 3. And they still outscored the Rangers by double-digit runs in that series and still lost the series. Like, it just doesn't, like, some of the numbers for baseball being such an analytically and number-driven sport, the Reds are doing some things that the numbers and stats just don't back up. Like, they are statistically one of the best offensive teams in baseball. They are visually garbage.
Which makes no sense.
Visually, it's so, yeah.
No. The guys beginning of the season, I told everybody I know, especially at the Bricks and all that, I give them till Memorial Day to see where they are with this. Francona is fine. There's nothing wrong with Francona. I disagree with not pinch hitting Benson and whoever he had on the bench when they brought in the right-handed pitcher. And the reason why Benson didn't play the last 2 games is because they had a left-handed starter, and he's been notoriously not really good against left-handed pitchers. And so I don't have a problem with that. But I do have a problem not pinch hitting him. I think it was the 9th inning where they're still down 1-0. And I think might have been a guy on base. Well, man, let him pinch hit. You got a right-handed pitcher now. Who knows what happens? If he gets out, he gets out. I'm very disappointed with Ellie. I'm very disappointed with McLean. Although he has played better now, he's moved him back to 8th and 9th back and forth in the lineup. And I'd leave him there. Espinal, to me, is the MVP of the team.
Yeah, that's why. And that's why I was so conflicted the other night when Terry Francona opted to let him hit in that clutch situation there. Obviously, you got to look at him and say, Espinal, like, you've been great, but in those clutch situations, you got to deliver there. But because he didn't, it opened the door to the criticism, and Terry Francona got flooded with it, and rightfully so too. To your point about bringing in Will Benson at that point. But Terry Francona kind of looked at Charlie Goldsmith, who asked the question, and basically just said, well, he's one of our better hitters. Like, he was confused as to why so many people are critical of this. He had the confidence in Espinal to deliver. He just didn't. And you know what comes next.
And another thing I said, wait until Memorial Day, see where they are.
Yep.
I look at this season, compare it to the NFL. You're a new coach in the NFL, first-year coach. You're coming to a team. You got your draft picks, whoever. Spring in practice, you're looking at as many people as you can. And then obviously the people who have been there are going to say, okay, these guys have been here. So they're going to pretty much graduate to playing on the top level, whether it's football or baseball or any sport. But then it's still a filling out period. Look at what I hate to compare it, but Belichick in New England for years. September, they were like 2-2, maybe 3-1, or basically, or maybe even 1-2 going into October, depending when the season started. And then they went on a roll. It's still, once you have your final core, it's a feeling out period. And after Memorial Day, okay, say June 1st, just end it there. I think you'll see Francona start putting in the people he really wants. Where I think it's still a feeling out period, which sounds crazy because you got spring training. You're playing with 30 games in spring training. But I listened to a lot of spring training games, and they had guys in A-ball, AA, guys that are on the Dragons right now played in the A games just to see how they can handle things. And that's how they evaluate where they're putting them level-wise. Okay, you're going to A-ball, you're going to AA, you're going to AAA.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a feeling out here. Let's see what happens by then. But these guys who like McLean, Steer, Stevenson, I think they brought up too soon.
I wasn't a fan of that, and I don't think that was a Francona thing. I said right now with the way that Trevino was playing and the way that Austin Wynns was playing, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I thought that the ecosystem in that clubhouse was so fragile that I thought with them playing so well that bringing Stevenson back to force him out there was going to throw off the rhythm of the other two. And sure enough, it absolutely has. There's just no rhythm and that was my biggest concern. I get it. Stevenson's your starting catcher, but I would have waited until they go cold. Talking about Trevino and Wynns, they weren't cold, and now they're cold because everyone's just trying to figure out their roles at this point. I wasn't a fan of calling them up.
No, I wasn't a fan at all. And what they did the same thing to Marte last year when they brought him up after the 80-game suspension. They did like a week and a half at Louisville, and he came up, I think it was the first game, and was like hit everything in sight. And then he didn't hit damn thing after that.
Nope.
And that's the same thing with Stevenson. He came up and had a couple of hits that first couple of games, and he hasn't touched the ball since. Was he like 143, something like that?
Yep, not good. Not good enough. But
they said, well, he's got to get his timing. You get your timing at AAA. You're still seeing some major league pitchers in AAA.
But
you get your timing there, and then you come back up.
But no, we're out of time, though. We're up against the clock. I appreciate you calling as always.
I'd love to get with you and Kev. We could talk for hours. I got all kinds of things. I'm going to write them down. I'm going to send them to you, my topics on things.
That'll work.
You'll appreciate it. Thank you, buddy. Have a great vacation.
I appreciate that, sir. Have a good weekend as well. Take care.
No problem. Bye. And downtown Dayton's a mess.
All right, 937-518-1410. That's the number if you want to call and jump in on the conversation. We'll stay on this. I'll stay on this as long as you guys want. There's some more calls coming in. 937-518-1410. Is the honeymoon period for Terry Francona, has it come and gone? Where are you at with the job that Terry Francona has done? And like I said, just a quick recap here. Being critical of somebody doesn't mean you want them gone. The people I have a problem with are the comments that I'm seeing from people where it's like, oh, the Reds should have never hired him. He should have stayed retired. You know, no more fossil managers in today's baseball. I mean, just ridiculous stuff. People act, by the way, Francona was retired for 1 year. People act like he should have stayed retired as if the guy was like Tony La Russa from years ago. That's not even close to being the same situation, but that's besides the point. All right, good stuff. We'll be right back. Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. Don't go anywhere.
ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. You want hot takes?
No, I'm not going to apologize to Ryan Day. Everything we said about Ryan Day up into the playoffs was true.
Not bad. Come on, Kenner. You can do better than that.
To be fair, of all the elite quarterbacks in the NFL, Joe Burrow is the least accomplished.
Getting better.
1,000,000%. I 1,000,000% believe that the Dayton Flyers are afraid of the Wright State Raiders. That's why they come up with every excuse in the book not to play them.
There it is. The hottest take of them all. It's the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers, live on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, everybody, we welcome you back in hour number 2, the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits. 4 o'clock here in the Miami Valley. We still have a lot to get into. We're going to hand it off the bench coming up here in just a few moments. Open up hour number 1, all things Terry Francona. Is the honeymoon stage officially over when it comes to the Hall of Fame manager and the Cincinnati Reds, who they just acquired last October. We played the clip from Marty Brenneman saying that in the multiple decades that the Castellinis have owned the franchise, that the Francona hire is single-handedly the biggest move in the history of the franchise during that time. And I agree with that, but I also think that's kind of sad, right? Like, I do think that the fact that the biggest move the Castellinis have made is the hiring of Terry Francona, and I'm not diminishing the hiring of Terry Francona. That's a massive move. But I also think that in baseball, especially in today's baseball, if the biggest move you've made in the tenure of your ownership is the hiring of a Hall of Fame manager, although it's a good move, it's sad that that's alone on an island with nothing even close. Now, I will say the Castellinis have done some weird, quiet, bigger moves. Like, obviously, we could talk about the Griffey thing, right? Hiring, I mean, we talk about firing and moving on from Dusty Baker, but hiring Dusty Baker was a big move. I mean, Dusty Baker was the manager of the Cubs. He was the manager of the Giants and Barry Bonds, and part of taking the Giants and Barry Bonds to his only World Series. He didn't win it, but his only World Series appearance, obviously the steroid scandal has just totally ruined the perception of who Barry Bonds is. But the bottom line is that is baseball's Michael Jordan, and that was his only World Series appearance, and it's because Dusty Baker led that, when not just managing the team, but managing the egos, managing the circus that was Barry Bonds. And you had Jeff Kent and Barry Bonds who just did not like one another. Jeff Kent was a tough personality as well. Yes, Dusty Baker was a big hire as well. And let's not forget that some of the other big moves that the Castellinis have made, like, for instance, I think going out and pulling the trigger to get Trevor Bauer years ago was huge. Trevor Bauer would go on to win a Cy Young. I know it was a truncated 20-game season. He's the only Cy Young winner in the history of the franchise. And you think about all the great pitchers and all the great dynasties that the Reds have had throughout the history of their existence, the fact that that's their only Cy Young winning pitcher ever is pretty fascinating. But the Castellinis pulled the trigger to, or at least granted permission, however you want to word it. That was a Castellini move as well. Technically Dick Williams move, but you see the point. The trade for Sonny Gray was big. Nick Castellanos, that was a big one right there. And, they're overseeing a time period where, although we're mad that they're not living up to expectations, we're watching a team that does have stars that have made us buy into the hopes of them being good. When you look at a Matt McClain and an Elly De La Cruz, and the fact that this is the second rebuild where they're pretty much homegrown. That playoff spurt that they had in the 2010s, early 2010s, that was a homegrown team. This is a homegrown roster pretty much. I know you went out and you had to get Trevino and some other pieces. You're not going to have every position out there homegrown, but the core put them in position to believe that they were close and in position to start adding some free agents. And hopefully there's even bigger ones coming down the road. But for right now, Castellinis have made some moves, or there's been some things that have happened under their umbrella, but really all that matters is wins, and those have not come. And that is what has led to the frustration amongst Reds fans. And I think it has sped up the honeymoon period for Terry Francona. And I think it's officially done. I mean, some people were furious with Terry Francona when, Ian Jabot was thrown out there to close out the game on opening day and ultimately blew that one too. So is what it is. This team has a lot of deficiencies, a lot of problems. And I think if I had to list 5 problems with this team, Terry Francona is not even in the top 10 of the top 5 problems that they have. Let's pump the brakes on the Terry Francona hate. We could be critical. I'm critical of Elly De La Cruz. I don't want him gone. I've been critical of Joe. I was critical of Joey Votto during his time in Cincinnati. At no point did I want him gone. I'm critical of a lot of athletes. I'm critical of Joe Burrow. I don't want Joe. Now, a Browns fan, me, says, yes, get him the hell out of Cincinnati. But I'm not advocating that the Bengals could do better at quarterback. They can't. He's one of the best in the league. There's no doubt about it. But at the same time, you can be critical. Being critical doesn't mean you want a coach or a player traded, fired, cut. You could be critical. But this idea that the Reds could do better at manager is just kind of silly. You guys did that. You Reds fans, some of you, not all of you. I'm not scolding all of you, but there's a good chunk of you, and you know who you are. You all thought you knew more than Dusty Baker, and that led to a decade and some change of David Bell, Brian Price, Riggleman. I mean, come on. Benavidez. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. Every time we think we know more than a Hall of Fame manager, it usually doesn't go well. I trust Terry Francona. I think this team's going to be fine. I don't think he's the problem. I think he's made mistakes, but so has Ellie, and I don't hear any of you calling for Ellie to be cut. So let's just leave it at that. College football. Let's switch gears here. And by the way, we'll keep the phone lines open. I have some guys on hold. We'll get to you guys in a second, but I want to switch gears over to college football. We all know my take on the big noon kickoff, and I hate Fox for I mean, it was a good business move what Fox did with the big noon kickoff. And you're probably thinking, for those who listen to the show regularly, oh God, here Kenner goes again complaining about the big noon kickoff. You know my stance on it. You know I hate it. Just because you call it prime time doesn't make it prime time. It's not prime time. It's noon. Okay, it's noon. We all know. I mean, as a kid, when it comes to sports, you grow up with the idea of can't wait to play under the lights. You know, they call it, even for high school, they call it Friday night lights for a reason. They don't call it Saturday afternoon umbrella to cover the sunlight from burning you. Like, what are we doing? Like, there's nothing exciting about a big noon kickoff. Stop it. But it was a business venture, and they thought if we just put a little jingle behind it and added a little flair, that we could make it a big thing. And it's college football. People are going to watch no matter what. It's a big viewership up a window right there. But again, it's not the same as playing under the lights. But that's besides the point. The one thing we do know, though, is that Fox has picked up the Texas-Ohio State game. And this came out earlier today that, of course, it disappeared on me. So 1 second while I go back and find this. But the bottom line is so earlier today, it had come out, Bucknuts and some of the other reports at 11 Warriors so it was Bucknuts, my apologies, 24/7 Sports had come out and said that Ohio State had efforted to move back the kickoff time of the Ohio State-Texas Week 1 matchup, which was picked up by Fox. They wanted to move the day. They wanted to move the game back an entire day to August 31st. Okay. And they wanted, so it'd be on a Sunday, August 31st on a Sunday. There is no NFL yet. All right. There's nothing going on. It's a nice little window to try to place that marquee matchup. Now, I see that Texas has denied, Texas denied Ohio State's request to play the marquee Week 1 matchup in primetime a day later on Sunday, August 31st. So Fox, who was open to this idea because Fox is okay with the idea of slotting that game the next night, primetime under the lights, real primetime, not JV primetime that Fox tries to, cram down our throats and take advantage of. Okay. So as we sit here, Texas is denying it. And Buckeye fans, you're furious. And you're saying that they're afraid. I see that Bucknuts and some others are, some of the writers or reporters for them are like, oh, Texas is afraid. I'm here to tell you right now, I want that game under the lights. It deserves to be under the lights. I hate that it's a big noon kickoff, but I'm here to tell you, good for Texas. Good for Texas. I wouldn't agree to move it either. You're already on the road. And more times than not, you don't have the power to decide when a game's going to be kicked off. So if you are given an opportunity to pick, if you're on the road, why would you pick, or why would you agree for Ohio State to move the game to a nighttime atmosphere to make it even more difficult for yourself? And the other thing that Texas is thinking too is how important this game is. Texas will be favored in this. It's going to be a tough one for Ohio State. I will not be surprised to see Ohio State lose this one, by the way, when we get there. It's a very good chance Texas wins this. They probably should. They have more experience returning players than Ohio State does. Ohio State has a lot of super talented players on this roster, but there is no warm-up game. There is no who the hell is that state to beat up on in weeks 1 and 2 before you get there. Remember, they didn't play Oregon until like 4 or 5 weeks into the season. They didn't play Oregon until October, and they played a bunch of nobodies for the first month and some change of the season before they played Oregon. So that means with Will Howard, a new quarterback, Quinshon Judkins, who was a new running back out of the portal at the time. You have Jeremiah Smith, obviously, who's a true freshman wide receiver out there. That means all three of those newcomers, if that's what you want to call them, had an entire month and some change to get college football reps, live game speed reps under their belt before they truly played their first big game of the season in Oregon. There's a lot of advantages there. Ohio State is going to be throwing out another new quarterback. There's some new offensive linemen. There's some new running backs. There's a lot of new talent on the defensive side of the ball. The D-line is a lot of question marks there. This Ohio State team is going to have zero who the hell is that state warm-up games to go up against to prepare for Texas. So the very first game of the season will be Texas. They want it under the lights. They want to have that atmosphere advantage. And by the way, you're going to have it no matter what. But it's an even bigger advantage to have it under the lights when your crowd's a little bit more sauced. All right. And it does have a bigger game feel. The bottom line is Texas, they had the chance to pick. They are not going to choose to allow Ohio State to have this game under the lights. And I don't blame them. Good for Texas. Stand your ground. I'm not mad at Texas. People are blaming. Even look at the headline. I think it was Patrick Murphy. Let me click on this article right here. So it was Patrick Murphy who wrote it. And even the headline, Texas is getting in the way of Ohio State, Texas playing in prime time. Texas isn't getting in the way. This goes back to Kev Nash's point. Ohio State's the reason this is happening. Money-hungry Ohio State and the Big Ten is why this is happening. I hate the Big Noon kickoff, but it is the Big Ten's fault, and it is Ohio State's fault. You guys agreed to it. I'm going to complain from a fan's perspective that I'm tired of Ohio State's biggest games being at noon, and I should be happy that they're trying to fight to get it under the lights, but I'm not going to sit here and be a homer and say that, that Texas is the cowards because they're not allowing Ohio State to move the game under the lights. I wouldn't either. And if the roles were reversed, I would be mad at Ohio State if they allowed the game to be moved to the nighttime if they were on the road going up against Texas. You should want that game played at noon if you're the road team for that very reason right there. It's an advantage. I don't want to say an advantage, but it's definitely less of a disadvantage for Texas to play at the shoe at noon than it is to play at the shoe at night the next day. Texas has done nothing wrong. They chose to do, if these reports are accurate, Texas is choosing to do what I would hope Ohio State would do if they were in the same exact situation and the roles were reversed and this game was at Texas. Stop calling Texas a bunch of wimps and saying they're not afraid to play Ohio State. In fact, they're licking their chops right now. They're going to have the quarterback advantage. They're going to have, Jeremiah Smith is pretty much they have a lot more experienced players coming back on both sides of the ball. They have the experience. So, even though Arch has never been the full-time starter for Texas, he has multiple starts under his belt. It's not going to be a shock and awe thing for him. Whoever the QB is for Ohio State, their very first game will be against a defense that has a lot of NFL talent on it. No warm-up games before. Texas has a huge opportunity here to beat Ohio State. And to be honest, if the QB for Ohio State looks rusty because it's their very first game ever, that's a problem. No warm-up games. You almost got to be a finished product. That's the concern that I have, and I think a lot of Buckeye fans have. So, yeah, it is what it is. 937-518-1410. Let's go to Shaw. Shaw, you still holding?
Yep, still here.
All right, what's up? Haven't talked to you in a while. What's going on?
Oh, not a whole lot. Just busy at work. Just got off. I called in about the Francona thing. I'm not even going to touch the topic you just brought up because everything I say will get construed as me being a Michigan fan. So
No. Ohio State, it's their fault. I think it's silly of the fans to poke fun at Texas to say they're afraid, and maybe that's not your take. I think Ohio State's wrong for this, for being mad at Texas. Texas did the right thing. Texas should decline it. They should keep it at noon, and I don't think it makes them look soft or anything. I think that it's actually good business to force Ohio State to play it at noon, and anyone that's mad like me, I'm not mad at Texas for this game not being under the lights. I'm mad at Ohio State in the Big Ten because they signed the dumb contract to allow this type of craziness to unfold to begin with. But But by all means, you can take the Michigan cap off. I won't put that on you. I've been begging you to take
No,
that
I mean,
thing
you
off.
and I very rarely try to take it off, but no, I agree with that full-heartedly. I don't understand why, as a fan base, you would think that Texas would be okay with moving that game, and I'm completely with you as well.
And I think Ohio State knew
that.
Real quick, sorry, Shaw. I think Ohio State knew that they were going to decline it. I think what Ohio State's trying to do here is save face. Ohio State knows deep down Texas was never going to agree to that, and nor should they.
Yep.
And I think by releasing this information out there, because by the way, who picks up on this stuff? How did that get out there? Colin Cowherd, his big takeaway on a lot of stuff is he goes, pay attention to not the report, not to what's being reported, but pay attention to what was the motive for that getting out. And I think Ohio State purposely put this out there so that they could let their fan base know, hey, guys, this big noon kickoff sucks. However, we did everything in our power except not take every dime available to us by signing this stupid big noon contract anyways. We did everything in our power to get this moved to under the lights, but those wussies, the Texas Longhorns, who we already beat them already, those cowards, those fraidy cats, they're afraid to play us, so now we got to settle for this big noon kickoff. I know what they're doing. They're trying to save face. This is Ohio State's fault, not Texas.
Yeah, 100%. And it's also Michigan's fault, too, because they wanted that money. And they felt that they needed to be competitive with the SEC and yada, yada, yada. Well, at the end of the day, the SEC is playing at prime time on ESPN and ABC, and Big Ten is playing at noon when, I understand some of the games some people are still watching, but I would really love to know the difference between the primetime games those nights and the noon game. I don't know. I think there's a reason why we don't know what those numbers are from Fox, because I think those aren't. Yes, Ohio State fans are watching them. Yes, Michigan fans are watching them, but I don't think the nation is watching them, and I don't think they're getting the return that they were hoping for. But the main reason I called is the Reds topic.
Yep.
I voted C, but that's not saying that I think that he should be fired or let go. And
I voted C too.
Mind.
I did C as well.
Yeah, I think the talk of he should have stayed retired and he's lost his step and he doesn't understand what he's doing anymore and he doesn't understand the game anymore. I think those things are so ill-founded it's not even funny. I know everybody probably has said this thing, but Terry Francona has forgot more baseball than I will ever know, and I know quite a bit. The things that he has done to this baseball team are the thing in baseball. It's the sport that it's the hardest to see what the manager does.
Yep.
And you've brought this up before. And the things that he's done to this ball club are those things. It's the things that people can't see. You're right, 100% correct. He's not going to come in there and reteach these guys how to hit or field a ground ball. That's not what he's going to do. What he does is get the guys around him to help him teach that stuff and help him understand the things that I don't understand. And I would love to sit him down and if I had the opportunity to ask him, why doesn't this team steal more? Why doesn't this team move to get the defense to move and help the hitter put the ball in play? I mean, you see the offense is struggling. We all see the offense is struggling. Why can't we do things to help this offense get going on a consistent basis? My number one, and I've brought it up almost every single time I've called, and I'm going to bring it again. It has nothing to do with Terry Francona, and quite frankly, it doesn't have anything to do with the players on the field. It's the front office.
Shaw, real quick. When it goes back to fundamentals, I've always said this too. Like, it's kind of like college as well, and you can't always blame colleges for this stuff too, but think of any profession that you go into. It's your job to, when you're in college, you're hoping to gain as much knowledge and hopefully on the job, hands-on training as much as possible to set you up for the real world when that time comes. And it's like, okay, that's the window to be as trained and buttoned up as possible, and what kind of skill set you go out into the workforce with kind of comes down to kind of what you've learned throughout college and just whether it's through internships and other hands-on opportunities throughout that. a lot of times, a lot of professions out there, not that they won't train you or help you along the way, but I mean, a lot of times they expect you to come in and not be a finished product, but at least have an idea, know what the hell that you are doing. I think I'm looking at the Reds. I think we're looking and blaming the wrong people. Instead of blaming Terry Francona for why these guys can't fundamentally field a ground ball or why they can't communicate in the outfield and have so many guys running into one another and just not knowing what sometimes the situation is with the outs on the base paths and just the lack of communication. Sometimes I wonder, what are they actually being taught in the minor leagues? Because I think this is a minor league problem, and the Reds have drastically improved their minor leagues over the years. And that I do know, and that's been a point of emphasis for the Reds front office, and they've done a good job revamping the minor league system. And I think you're seeing that with the amount of top 100 prospects that are continuously being thrown out there. However, when you look at, and I trust me, I get that too. Chase Petty came out recently. We've seen Chase Petty in action. It hasn't been great, but he's one of those prospects that are supposed to make you feel all warm and fuzzy about the damn team's future. Yeah. But the bottom line is, what are they being taught in the minor leagues? Because I feel like when Elly De La Cruz does hit the main roster and he's out there with that Reds uniform, I'm not saying he should be perfect, but what were you learning in the minor leagues? What were you doing in the minor leagues? I mean, don't you think that when they said, hey, how's his progression coming? Obviously, I'm sure they're saying, hey, he's probably really struggling in this department. Well, then that's a point of emphasis that needs to be hammered in the minor leagues, not 66-year-old Terry Francona, who's trying to manage this team into the playoffs, but yet keeps being hampered by the fact that his damn professional baseball players can't field a damn ground ball. It's ridiculous, and it's not on Terry Francona, in my opinion, for that. I don't put that on him.
Correct, and you're kind of feeding right into my point, and you didn't even really realize it. Like with Elly.
Yep.
We want him to be a molded product, and we want him to be a finished product. And you just brought up, he should have learned this stuff in the minors. Well, wasn't this kid rushed through the minors?
I don't know if he was rushed through the minor. Well, I mean, I guess if you're, I mean, he.
But my point is this.
I don't know how to answer that because I'm not saying you're wrong. But I don't want to say yes.
I don't either, and I don't really know either because the talent said bring him up, but the talent isn't refined yet, and it's going to my point. Why I put so much of this on the front office is because we have go back to March, and we're having these conversations of how the season's going to go and what we hope's going to happen, and yada yada yada. All of our hopes were on a 25-year-old who's not refined yet. If you really think about it, we needed Elly to be an MVP candidate. Realistically, is he there yet? No, he's not. He's 25 years old. He's got more development that needs to be done. And he's trying to learn while learning at the hardest level of this game. And that's my frustration right now. And we're here and now. I understand all that. And I'm just as guilty as anybody else, and I raise my hand because there's times where I just get completely frustrated at him, but the kid's 25 years old. He doesn't even know what he's forgot yet. And McLean, yes, he's a little bit older, but all these guys got rushed up, like you say numerous times, in June of 23 or 22, whichever it was. We rushed all those kids up, and yes, it was a great month, but that's all it's been. Because the development has caught up to those kids getting brought up. And the league has caught up to those kids.
Yeah, if you look back at last year to this year, Elly's he's the same player. There's no, I was really curious. What I was fascinated with this year to see, I thought this was not a breakout year, but I thought this was going to be the year that he solidifies himself as a legitimate MVP candidate moving forward, whether it's for the Reds or Dodgers. Okay. So that's what I thought this season was going to be. Now I'm like, well, where's he gotten better? What is he doing different? What is he better at this season than last year? He looks just as raw at short this year as he did last year. He's 23, not 25, by the way. That proves your point even more, by the way. No, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I looked it up. I'm like, is he 25? He's 23, so he's even younger. But right. But yeah, and can he figure out? Yes. Will he figure out? Most likely. But the bottom line is there's so many things that people are blaming Terry Francona for that at some point you got to look at these professional baseball players and they got to be held accountable for their inability to field a ground ball consistently. And I'm even more critical of Elly because everyone's like, well, he's only 23. He's so young. I don't care. when he's being put on video game covers and he's already being anointed as the face of the franchise needs to know how to play fundamental baseball, and he doesn't.
And all of that is legit.
And that's my problem. And if Ellie De La Cruz needs 66-year-old Terry Francona to go out there and physically say, okay, you need to get your feet shoulder length apart, get an athletic stance, and put your glove here, and then teach him how to take a ground ball like what you'd say at a Little League park here in Dayton, I think that this team's in trouble if that's the case. If that's people's actual mentality that David or that Terry Francona is not teaching them the fundamentals, I don't think he needs to be teaching them the fundamentals. I think when you get to this point, all right, I think that you need to know how. I think you need to know the fundamentals, and if you don't have them by now, that's a problem. And I think that that's a reflection on the farm systems, the Dragons and everybody else, like as far as that goes. So who knows?
It is 100%. And what I'm hoping is, and I'm hoping like of all hope, that we will see the fruits of their labor from spring training all the way through, is that the second half is better than the first half. I can see when Ellie comes to the plate, he's working on something. What that is, I don't know 100%. But
and when you're working on something on a team that's trying to win right now, that's a problem, because the stuff you should be working on should be down in the minors. And I'm not advocating for to go down to the minors, but that's the conflict here. That's the conflict of not interest. But yeah, I mean, however you want to word it. But yeah, you're right. It looks like he's working on stuff. Even veterans, to be fair, Joey Votto was constantly changing up his batting stance, and it's all about making adjustments, yes. But Joey Votto perfected so many of those stances. Ellie hasn't perfected anything yet. He just keeps showing glimpses. And there's a difference between trying to make adjustments and, as your career goes on, and just trying to figure it out. And Ellie's still trying to figure it out. It's less adjustments and more figuring it out than that of a Joey Votto, who's constantly tinkering with his at-bat stance and everything else. So who knows? Right. Who knows?
It's frustrating because we want to see the results now, but I think a lot of us forget that these are kids and they are still developing, and that's not what we want to hear. And it's not the easy fix, and it's not that. And it goes back to my point in the off season that this team would have brought one or two veteran guys in here that could actually have gotten this lineup more depth and able to teach these young kids what the ropes are and how to handle the day-to-day rigors of a Major League Baseball schedule. Things I think could possibly be going a little differently. And it's very frustrating when you turn on certain shows and you see them go completely off because, well, the third baseman didn't get subbed out for Benson. And yes, I understand maybe Benson probably should have hit in the ninth inning. And I get that on the one hand, but on the other hand, I hate to be the bearer of bad news to people, but who's going to play third base if Espinal came out that night?
And that was his explanation. And I know me and the guys and Elliot and Jacob, I threw that out there to them. They weren't having it, but I do know for a fact, I'm like, hey, you don't have to like his explanation, but that was his explanation. And again, it made sense. We don't know, because Gavin Lux, with that injury, he was not feeling the best. And what he did not want to have happen was him having to go out there and field. It's one thing if it's like a pinch hit, DH, whatever, but that's not. A pinch hit means you're in the game, and now you got to go out there defensively. Right. And there was not a lot of flexibility there.
And then you go back to the eighth too, and they're talking about how they should have subbed in Benson and they should have subbed in Hines for Stevenson instead of bringing in Trevino. Well, that's grand and dandy, but who's going to catch?
Yep.
I mean, so we want to sit here, and I'm with the other caller a little bit ago. I understand Benson has struggled against left-handed hitting his entire career, but the Akai was also as hot as he's ever been his entire career too. Let's just see what happens. If it fails, it fails, and then we can sit him the second game, and then we can move on. But what happens if he does go out there?
Well, it reminds me of
what happens if he does go out there?
Remember, it was Jesse Winker. He, everyone kept saying he was the team's best hitter, but he couldn't hit right. He couldn't hit against right-handed pitching. And I said, well, how can he be the team's best hitter if he can't hit right-handed pitching? If your best hitter is constantly having to be taken out of lineups constantly because of that, he's not your best hitter. And that was always my big. But then Winker would go on these tears, and David Bell would, he'd have these 10, 11 game hitting streaks, and then be taken, and then he wouldn't play for a game or two because of the pitching matchup. But that stuff would drive me nuts. If a guy's hot, he's hot. Let them play it out. I know the numbers say otherwise, but sometimes this is where the gut comes into play. And I wish the gut of Terry Francona would have rolled with it as far as that goes. But that's the thing. Yep. Everyone's like, well, he's too old school. He doesn't utilize the numbers. Then he utilizes the numbers, and it gets used against him. Like
100%. Right now, he's getting messed over on so many accounts just because this isn't the roster he wants. This is not what I can promise you. This is not the roster that he wants. And that's why I'm still holding out hope for the offseason that this front office is actually going to go out there and do some major things this offseason, and then we'll see the Terry Francona and the Cincinnati Reds we were all hoping for next season. And it's just, but again, it's another wasted season, and here we are in May already talking about that. That's the frustration part.
Mid-season form, but we're at it. Shall I wrap real quick? Final point before we go, because I'm up against the clock.
No, I understand, and I completely forgot my other point.
You're okay. You were busy. I see your burner account, the Wolverine Scoop, on YouTube.
What did he say now?
Oh, he says big soft. He's and yeah, Ohio State trying to move it back. That is kind of soft in my opinion, but that's not your burner account, the Wolverine Scoop.
No.
What would your burner
accounts have my name on it?
If you had a burner account, and it had Wolverine in it, what would what would it be? The Wolverine. I would take out SC and put another P at the beginning.
One.
Wolverine's number one.
Wolverine's number one.
Not Wolverine's probably. Asterisk. You wouldn't put an asterisk next to it?
It doesn't need an asterisk.
National champion asterisk.
We don't need one. You guys can use one though. I mean, you guys didn't beat us last year, so.
That's no one puts an asterisk because you didn't beat your rival there. You won a national championship. That's all that matters.
Yeah, we beat you guys and went undefeated, and we won the national championship too.
Yeah, you Barry Bonds did.
But Barry Bonds still has all those trophies.
And yet he's not. You know what? No, we're not doing this. We're not doing this, Shaw. Go before I hang up on you.
Go Blue.
Yeah. All right. Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. Yes, talking Reds right there, but open it up. Texas, Ohio State going to play week 1 college football. Supposed to play at noon. Big noon kickoff. I hate the big noon kickoff. Just because you call it prime time doesn't mean it's prime time. It's not prime time. Deion Sanders didn't get the nickname prime time because he had his biggest names at noon. He was named prime time because he had his biggest performances in prime time under the lights when the lights were the brightest. That's what real prime time is, not this crap that Fox continues to throw out there. So everyone knows my take on that. I hate it. But with that being said, the reason Ohio State has to play the big noon kickoff almost every other week is because they were money hungry and they decided to support the Big Ten's dumb decision to go with Fox. Okay. That's them. That's on them 100%. So when this report came out today that Ohio State was trying to effort to team with Texas to agree to move the kickoff time from noon on the 31st or whatever it is to the next day on the 30th to the 31st on Sunday at night. All right, Ohio State trying to maneuver that. They really want it full steam ahead. Texas said, no, we're good. And people are saying Texas is soft. People are saying Texas, they're afraid of Ohio State. Texas should not bow to Ohio State and agree to that. This is Ohio. This is, and I see Bucknuts. They put the headline out there that Texas is in the way of Ohio. They're standing in the way of Ohio State getting this game moved to prime time. Ohio State's why this game's not in prime time. Because they were money hungry. That's all they cared about, even though that program can print money no matter what they do. And instead, it backfired because they ended up creating more mess for themselves. If I'm Texas, I would have done the same thing. And if the roles were reversed in Ohio State, if Texas was trying to get Ohio State to move their big noon kickoff tonight on the road, I would hope Ohio State would say no as well. And it wouldn't make them soft. It would make them smart. And it's smart of Texas, who's already at a disadvantage playing on the road to begin with. Why would they look at Ohio State and say, yes, let me choose to make our atmosphere even more difficult by agreeing to move the game at night? No, thanks. No, thanks. Texas, they made the right move. They're not afraid of Ohio State. In fact, they're licking their chops. They're excited to play Ohio State. Ohio State's going to have a new quarterback, new running backs, a couple new offensive linemen. Defensive line's going to be a lot of question marks there. Ohio State's vulnerable. They're not going to play any crappy MAC schools to prepare for this. Last year they had a month and some change of no-name university schools to go up against preparing for Oregon. They lost to Oregon. This year, you got to be as close to a finished product as possible to try to get the biggest win outside of Michigan on the schedule this season. If I'm Texas, I wouldn't move it either. If I'm Texas, I wouldn't move it either, as far as that goes. So nonetheless, the Wolverine Scoop weighs in, says, if anyone knows about being on sanctions, it's a Buckeye fan. I mean, what are we doing? I think Wolverine Scoop, I don't know who you are. I really do think you need to sit this one out. Like, I'm surprised that you guys are still comfortable with chirping. I'm surprised that you guys actually think that you like have the upper hand in any kind of debate with Ohio State fans, even with the 4 straight wins. Because Ohio State just won a national championship after you did. But the difference is the success of Ohio State comes from actually being a legitimate, real program and not having to be a cow. You said big soft a little bit ago. This coming from a fan of a program that had to go on the biggest cheating scandal in the history of sports just to win games. You couldn't even beat TCU when you didn't have their signals. And you're going to sit here and start poking fun at Ohio State fans. Sit this one out, buddy. Find something else to do. I mean, it's Thursday. I know it's kind of crappy out. There's not a lot to do, but I'm pretty sure there's something else you could be doing. I mean, I have no problem with the back and forth with people at all, but at least be self-aware. I feel bad for people like you. You go to bed at night and wake up in the morning truly thinking that you are a legit national champion. You go to bed at night and wake up in the morning and truly think that your program did it in a legit way. That is so sad. That is embarrassing. And I'm almost embarrassed that I even interacted with this thing. This is ridiculous. In fact, I'm going to just disappear. I'm going to play the music. And we're going to pretend, all right, that this conversation never happened. In fact, just like Michigan's national championship, here in about a week or two, it didn't happen. We'll be right back. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Next.
ESPN 1410 Wing AM weather.
Forecast calls for clearing.
All right, and we are back. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers here on a Thursday, 4:42 here in the Miami Valley. Talked about Ohio State, Texas again, trying to get that kickoff time moved back. I know I'm not obsessing over it. There was just new information that came out today, so that's why we were talking about that. Texas denying Ohio State's request to move the kickoff from noon to the next night, Sunday, under the lights. And Texas somehow is being viewed as soft in this particular situation. I don't think that's the case. I think it's smart of Texas. I think that if Ohio State truly cared about having all these games under the lights, they wouldn't have made the, money-hungry decision of signing the big noon kickoff contract to begin with. But that's besides the point. Other big news out of college football today. Brett McMurphy and other college football reporters out there. The college football this is actually pretty big. Last year was the inaugural 12-team college football playoff, and I thought it was very successful as far as the intrigue and just the interest in it. Obviously, we knew it would be. We knew it would be huge. There's still a lot of weird things about it. Like, obviously, we knew the auto buys to the conference champions. There's just some conferences that aren't worthy of getting buys on certain years. They're just not. I'm not big on guaranteeing buys for the Big Ten and the SEC. I mean, if you have a bad year, I don't think you should be guaranteed anything. But I also know that not everyone should be guaranteed a buy if you're a conference champion. The Pac-12 is not good. The American Conference not good. Like, why are they getting auto buys? Like, it should. I mean, the seeding needs to be based on the strength and just how good these teams truly are. So there will be major changes to this year's playoff, as well as even bigger changes for more playoff pictures down the road. So, according to Brett McMurphy, the 2025 college football playoff changes will be now that there will be straight seeding. The top 4 seeds get first-round buys, regardless if it won a conference title. Conference champs will still get auto bids, but are seeded based on ranking. This will be the final year. This is where it gets interesting, too. So we saw the very first 12-team college football playoff last year. This will be the final 12-team college football playoff this upcoming season, because in 2026, the playoff will expand to either 14 or 16, according to sources of Brett McMurphy. Now, if the straight seeding was in place last year, the biggest difference for the layout of the playoff would have been Texas and Penn State would have received first-round buys. Boise State would have dropped from number 3 to number 9, and Arizona State from number 4 to number 11. And I love that, because there was no way in hell that those teams should have been seeded as high as they were. There's just no way. And if you're watching live on the for the few of you that are on the YouTube and the Facebook side, and again, you can watch the show on the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page. Go and follow that page and jump in there and interact and all that fun stuff. But go and check that out. It's one of those where here's what it would have looked like. Sorry, I lost it. There it is. If the straight seeding was in place last year, here is what the college football playoff bracket would have looked like. So last season, as you know, Indiana played Notre Dame. Penn State played SMU, right? Boise had the bye. I mean, just weird stuff. So if the straight seeding would have been in place last year, the first round matchups would have been Boise State and Indiana. And I think Indiana would have loved that. Or Boise. I mean, that's the thing. Here's where the expanded playoff would be good for some of those types of programs. The fact that in the 8 versus 9, Indiana would have had a very good chance. They would have probably beat Boise. No one would have been surprised to watch Boise beat Indiana. Boise was solid last year. They took it to Oregon. All right, they lost, but they had a chance to beat Oregon late. They held their own initially against Penn State. It wasn't terrible. I think Boise State could have beat Indiana last year. The winner of Boise State, Indiana, the 8 versus 9 last year would have gone on to take on Oregon in the Rose Bowl. Oregon, Indiana, most likely. The second, another first-round matchup, and this would have been a better matchup. And by the way, Boise, Indiana, that would have been a better win for college football than Boise, Notre Dame, because of the fact that you're going to get more competitive games this way. So now you're going to get the 12 versus the 5 and Clemson against Notre Dame. A much more competitive game right there. Notre Dame would go on most likely to play Penn State, who would have got the auto bye there. Texas would get the auto bye. They would take on the winner between Ohio State and Arizona State last year. So instead of welcoming in Tennessee, Ohio State would have welcomed in Arizona State. You would have got Ohio State, Texas in the second round. You look at SMU and Tennessee. That would have been the other first-round matchup in a 10 versus 7. The winner of that would go on to face Georgia in the second round in the quarterfinals. So now your quarterfinal matchups would have been Oregon, Indiana, who they did not play in the regular season last year. Penn State, Notre Dame, loved that. Would have loved. I mean, that would have been that's a great quarterfinal matchup right there, and we got a chance to see it in the semifinal last year. Texas, Ohio State, a semifinal matchup that is now a quarterfinal matchup, and then Georgia and Tennessee would have played one another, SEC rematch. But again, lots on the line in the playoffs. And then in the semifinals, you would have probably got Oregon against either Penn State or Notre Dame. You would have got Texas, Ohio State versus Georgia, most likely. And then you get a semifinal of Ohio State, Georgia, and Penn State, Oregon, or Notre Dame, Oregon. I just feel like last year the playoff would have been significantly better had it had this seeding. I love this seeding format. I think it makes the most sense. I wasn't a big fan of the expansion of the playoffs to begin with, but we're here. And I thought last year we made it way too complicated. So, again, if you're just joining us and catching this, again, there will be changes to the upcoming 2025 college football playoff seeding picture. The top 4 seeds will get first-round byes. It is regardless of whether you are a conference champion or not. Ohio State did not win the Big Ten last year. Penn State did. There could be a scenario where, they could be ranked higher. Who knows? But the bottom line is winning a conference championship is still vital. You still keep the importance of winning a conference championship because it is an auto bid to the playoff. You win your conference championship, you're automatically in the playoff, but you are not automatically handed a bye, and you're not automatically ranked in the top 4. So I think that's pretty important. I think that's a smart change by the playoff. The other interesting wrinkle to this is the fact that this will be the final year of the 12-team playoff. According to Brett McMurphy, some of his sources say that next year the playoff will expand, not this upcoming season, but the following season, 2026, we will see a 14 or a 16-team college football playoff. Interesting. So who knows? I loved it last year. Look, I got a chance to check off an item off the bucket list to go to the Rose Bowl last year. You ever check something off your bucket list and it's always cool, but you think back on it, it was neat. Okay, cool. I regularly think about that Rose Bowl game. I want to go back so bad. That was the coolest experience. Yes, Ohio State whooped their ass. That definitely helped. But there is nothing like the Rose Bowl. That was the coolest sporting experience ever for me. And I've worked in sports my entire adult life. I've had a lot of really cool experiences. I've been able to attend Final Fours and cover NCAA tournament games and Ohio State games and all of the college basketball, whatever. That was the coolest experience ever. And the fact that they were able to keep the Rose Bowl within this concept is pretty neat. And I'm hoping Ohio State gets back there next year. I'm hoping they beat Michigan. I'm hoping they beat Texas. I'm hoping they win the Big Ten. I'm hoping they win another national championship. So there you go. But I love that change is coming to college football. I thought that was drastically needed at the end of the day. All right, I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show, 1410 ESPN Radio. Step away for a few moments. We'll close out hour number 2. The Reds getting set to take on the Cubs tomorrow night. The Reds are off today. With the Reds dropping 2-3 against the Pirates, have you given up on the season now? Are you officially checked out? We only have a few minutes left, but we'll do a quick preview of the Reds and the Cubs. Game 1 tomorrow night. Hunter Green comes back. We'll be right back. right, and we are back, 4:55 here in the Miami Valley. I'm Justin Kinner. If you are a wrestling fan, we do have cards subject to change coming up immediately following the Justin Kinner Show at 6 o'clock. Benjamin Chimera, Big Kev will walk, again, 2 hours every Thursday, cards subject to change. Ben, his guys do a great job, so make sure you stick around after the show to hang out with them. More local shows coming up your way here throughout the night. So, we just talked about it. The college football playoff announces that they're going to go straight seeding now. No auto buys to conference champions. You can win your conference tournament or conference championship. You are automatically going to be in the college football playoff at that point, but you're not guaranteed a buy. You could still be ranked in the double digits. Like, it gets you in the door. That's all that matters. So there's still a lot of importance put on winning your conference championship, but at the same time, it's not just giving you an auto buy, which I thought made last year's playoff bracket just look off. Poor Oregon. You get the auto buy, but congrats, you get Ohio State, who would go on to win a national championship. In Ohio State, the way that they did it, to their credit, that was there was no other team. If any other team won a national championship, no other team would have faced a tougher path than they did. Now, you could say, well, if Oregon would have beat Ohio State, Oregon still would have had to have beaten Texas and Notre Dame. I think Texas would have had Oregon would have had the second toughest stretch to win a national championship. And the reason I say Ohio State had the toughest is not because I'm a homer. You had to play Tennessee. Yes, it was a home game, but you still had to play an SEC, a very tough. Tennessee was good last year, guys. Like, I don't care how bad they looked against Ohio State in that game. Tennessee was in the playoff for a reason. And it's not because of SEC bias or anything. That's a good team. And Ohio State made them look like a bad team because Ohio State just throttled them, right? But the bottom line is Oregon had the bye. Ohio State beats Tennessee. If Oregon beats Ohio State again, Oregon would probably go on to beat Texas and Notre Dame for a national championship. It would have been impressive. But to me, they had the second toughest path to win a national title. Ohio State had the toughest. You had to play an SEC team in the first round. You had to beat Tennessee. You had to beat Oregon, a team that was undefeated, the number one team in the country, Big Ten champion. Yes, you played them in the Rose Bowl. You had a lot of fans there, but still at a disadvantage because once you're on the West Coast, that's where Oregon lives, right? What are we doing? Then you play Texas in Texas, and then you play Notre Dame in the national championship game, one of the best defenses out there. Ohio State had the toughest path to a title, and they checked off every box. Good for them. But I see Notre Dame fans doing this thing on social media. With the change of the college football playoff now just going to straight seeding, remember what happened before when you had to win when you had to win your conference championship to get the auto bye. Seeds 1 through 4 were all conference champions with auto buys, which means Notre Dame could face 12 top 10 teams in the country, be undefeated, win all of them by 60. And the highest seed they could have gotten in the previous format was 5. That wasn't fair to Notre Dame. Bunch of crybaby fans crying, oh, we can't. So the highest we could ever be ranked is 5. Well, yeah, because you're not in a conference, because you don't have the cojones to get in a conference. Because that's an argument, a tired one, but an argument for another day. Now with this, it helps Notre Dame, right? I see a buddy of mine, Jimmy, says bad news for the Notre Dame will be forced to join a conference crowd. I don't think it's bad news at all. It's an opportunity now for Notre Dame to be seated higher than 5. But this is the same individual, as well as a lot of the other Notre Dame fans I know, that have been crying this week because why? Well, USC is thinking about ending a rivalry that dates back over 100 years because there's no point in playing Notre Dame anymore. We learned with Indiana last year. We learned with Arizona State last year. We learned with SMU and some of these others. We learned you don't have to be very, very good to make the playoff. You just have to have a lot of wins. Better teams missed the playoffs because they had one additional loss because they actually played somebody. So why would USC, who now plays in the Big Ten, who has to play Oregon, who now has to play Michigan, who now has to play Ohio State, who has to play Penn State, who they lost to last year, why would it make sense for Lincoln Riley and USC to play Notre Dame anymore? It doesn't make any sense at all. Before, when they played in the Pac-12 and the Pac-12 was not very good, you kind of needed that staple Notre Dame rivalry matchup to kind of help boost up your resume a little bit. Playing Notre Dame benefits USC 0. So it doesn't surprise me that USC is looking to get out of this Notre Dame series, or not. They're not looking to get out of it. They have no interest in renewing it. So Notre Dame fans have been crying all week about this. So this idea that, it's a bad day to have the take of Notre Dame should join a conference. You're going to need to join a conference because there is zero benefit to playing Notre Dame in regards to being a top program out there. Like if you're Ohio State, scheduling Notre Dame at all in the non-conference is just silly. As crazy as this sounds, I don't want Ohio State to play Texas. I don't want them to play Alabama when that time comes. As much as I would, and I'm split on this because I do want to see Alabama play at the Shoe. I can't wait to see Georgia play at the Shoe. I also don't think that that's going to happen. I don't think we're going to see. I think this Texas series is going to be the last series that Ohio State plays as far as against premier blue blood programs in the regular season. I truly believe it. I do not see Ohio State and Alabama ever stepping foot on the field together in a non-playoff format. I don't think that the Georgia series is going to go down. I think that the Texas game, I think that because you're welcoming in Texas this year, I think Ohio State will play at Texas next year. And I see them in Alabama and Georgia all finding ways to get out of that. There is zero upside to playing one another. Because if Ohio State, you play Texas this year. Let's say you lose to Texas week 1. There's no harm in that. You're still going to be like, they lose to Texas, no big deal. They're still a playoff contender. I'm not losing sleep. But if you lose to Penn State, now it makes Michigan must win. Michigan's always must win, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I get that. But you've lost 4 straight, and you've lost to bad Michigan teams so at that stretch at the same time. So it's not as if it's unheard of that Ohio State could lose to Michigan this year too. So if Ohio State loses to Texas and Penn State and Michigan, Ohio State's not making the playoff. For one, you don't deserve to. If you play 3 good teams, you lose to all 3 of them. You're not going to hear me crying that they should be in the playoff. You've played good teams and you've proven you can't beat them. Why do you want to get into the playoff to play teams that you've already proven you can't beat? But that's an argument for another day. The point is, if you are Ohio State and you play no-name University in week 1 instead of Texas, you're going to win that. And then you lose a close one to Penn State and you lose another close one to Michigan. Guess what? You're still in the playoff. But you can't have 3 losses and make the playoff. Why risk it? The Big Ten's good enough that you don't need to challenge yourself in the non-conference. And I hate when people do this. Well, again, Ohio State's not afraid of anybody. You're right. They're not. Good for them. I love that about Ohio State too. But I'm not going to love Ohio State missing the playoff if you fall short against those 3 really good teams this year. There's no way. Everyone said there's no way you lose to Michigan 4 straight years, and here we are. Way. So we'll see. But this idea that Notre Dame is pumping their chest, saying it's a bad day for all the critics out there, you may have won this one with the change of the format. But because of the change of the format, and we saw last year Indiana get praised for playing nobody and losing to the only somebody that they did play in Ohio State. Indiana beat nobody last year. There was not one credible win on their resume last year. And the only good team that they played was Ohio State, and they got their doors blown off. And they made the playoff because they had 1 loss, and they had a lot of wins. So, to me, the committee is telling you, we just need you to have a lot of wins and not a lot of losses. It's pretty simple, actually. This isn't that complicated. And trying to make it harder on yourself by risking losses that you really don't need to. You have no choice. You have to play Michigan. You have to play Penn State. There's certain teams you just have to play because they're in your conference. You don't have to play Texas. You don't have to make this thing harder on yourself than you have to. The Big Ten absorbed legitimate playoff contending programs. The SEC absorbed Texas and Oklahoma, legitimate playoff contending programs. I don't think the SEC needs to challenge themselves in the non-con, and I don't think the Big Ten does either. I think your conference is good enough that you don't need to soup it up. The fan in me wants to see those matchups, but the analytical fan in me that knows how the playoff works, I don't think it's worth it. You beat Texas, what do you gain? Well, it's a playoff resume builder. You don't need Texas to build your resume. Go beat Penn State and Michigan, beat up on the Big Ten, you're fine. I don't think Texas needs Ohio State, and I don't think Ohio State needs Texas. I'm glad the matchup's happening. It doesn't need to happen, though. Notre Dame pumping their chest. There's the same fan base crying this week because USC are soft. They're trying to get it. No, USC is smart. USC is smart. There is no point to play Notre Dame. And I can't wait. I really hope. In fact, I'm going to pull this up now. I am kind of curious about this. The upcoming Notre Dame opponents. Sorry, this is great radio, guys. Sorry about that. Future Notre Dame opponents, okay? I'm curious how many of these actually happen. So Notre Dame's going to play at Miami this year, week 1. Week 1's going to be fun. I mean, the fact that, Ohio State or Texas will be at Ohio State on the 31st, Notre Dame at Miami. But, look at this. So Notre Dame, they put good schedules together because a lot of good teams that are on their schedule, they need Notre Dame as well, or needed in the past. They don't need them now. At Miami week 1, you got Texas A&M week 2. You got Purdue and at Arkansas in weeks 3 and 4. That's a heck of a schedule. In fact, I would argue no other team plays a schedule like that. I respect Notre Dame's schedules because if you notice, it's not 3 weeks of Miami of Ohio, 3 weeks of, another week of Grambling. And that's no disrespect to those schools, but they're on those schools get put on these schedules for a reason. Okay. They're primer games. They're wet your palate games is what they are. So good for Notre Dame for playing at Miami, Texas A&M, Purdue, Arkansas. They're Purdue. You should beat Purdue, but Purdue's a lot better, more of a challenge than a Miami of Ohio or someone like that, right? So that's kind of where I'm at. They play Boise State, the playoff team from last year, NC State, USC, Boston College. Okay, so let's go to 2026. So this was announced yesterday, too, that when Notre Dame plays Wisconsin in 2026, that game is going to be played at Lambeau Field in Green Bay. Okay. I think that game happens because Wisconsin's not a power. Wisconsin, if they can get a win over Notre Dame, it almost gives them a pass to lose a big game in the Big Ten. So I do think Notre Dame and Wisconsin play one another. Wisconsin's I think Notre Dame moving forward is going to have to fill their schedule with those mid-tier teams in these conferences. Wisconsin benefits from playing a Notre Dame. Maybe. Actually, you know what? I don't know anymore. Because now if you're Wisconsin, why risk? Yeah, I'm walking it back. Sorry, changing my mind. I think that game's going to happen just because we're a year out from it. But if I'm Wisconsin, I wouldn't blame them at all if they pulled the plug on that matchup either. I don't care if it's at Lambeau. Why risk it? I got to look. I don't have Wisconsin's schedule in front of me, but if you're playing USC and Ohio State and Penn State in the same season, I would urge them to get the hell out of that Notre Dame game. Don't play it. You gain nothing from it. You win that, great. But you lose it, you're definitely losing at least 2 more games that season. And for sure, you play no-name state in that week 1 instead of Notre Dame, and you lose to Ohio State and Penn State, but you beat everybody else. You're a 2-loss team. You don't win a Big Ten championship. There's 14, 16 teams in the playoff. Wisconsin's going to get in, not with 3 losses. Take Notre Dame off that damn schedule, please. You don't need Notre Dame on that schedule. Michigan State, same thing. The big schools don't need Notre Dame, and I thought the mid-tier schools do, but the more I think about it while talking with you guys, they don't. They don't need them either. I think Notre Dame is going to be I think that their situation is going to get messier moving forward. I think it's going to be a lot more difficult. So pump your chest, brag about, oh, yeah, and see, we're never going to have to be forced to join a conference. No one's going to force you to join a conference, but there's going to be a lot of teams that want nothing to do with playing you. And it's not because they're afraid of you. It's just because why play you? Notre Dame has been bailed out so many times, and I'm tired of it. I literally can't stand Notre Dame's program. I can't. I'm so glad Ohio State whooped their behinds in the national championship game because I really didn't want Notre Dame to get rewarded with a championship. I like Marcus Freeman, but the second that Ryan Day leaves, that's Marcus's job. So at this point, I'm never going to cheer for Marcus at Notre Dame moving forward. I'm happy for him. If Ohio State's not in the title game last year, I'm probably rooting for Marcus Freeman more than I am Notre Dame. But it is what it is. All right. Sorry, rambling a lot. All right. The Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers here, 510 in the Miami Valley. Again, card subject to change. Benjamin Kamara, Big Kevin Company coming up at 6 o'clock. Keep that in mind. No Reds baseball tonight. The Reds are off as opposed to the Reds being on the last couple of games. I think they didn't know that they were on the last couple of days. I think they thought they were off already. But woofa. Cincinnati Reds, 25-26. 2 of their last series, they dropped 2 of 3 against 2 of the worst teams in baseball. They dropped 2 of 3 at home against the Chicago White Sox, and then they go on the road to Pittsburgh, and they dropped 2 of 3 at PNC. But hey, they swept the Guardians there in the middle. I don't know who the hell this team is. They're off tonight. Game 1 against the Cubs tomorrow, division leading Cubs. Cubs 10 games above 500, 30-20 on the season. They have a 5.5 game lead on the Reds in the Central as it is. This season can get really ugly this weekend. Luckily, the Reds have Hunter Green on the mound tomorrow night. Luckily. Now, what they do with that, I don't know, because the Reds have gotten some amazing pitching performances all season, and they don't have a whole lot to show for it. We'll talk more about that game on tomorrow's show, no doubt. All right, the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers, 1410 ESPN Radio.
Have you experienced foot or ankle pain during or after sports, running, or exercising